The wine glass was still wet from the dishwasher when she poured herself a second glass. Not the cheap red she usually drank, but that expensive bottle she once said we'd save for a special night. Apparently, tonight qualified, though I wasn't part of it. She leaned against the kitchen counter like it didn't belong to both of us. Her lips were painted a shade I didn't recognize. A deep crimson. We don't even own lipstick in that color. She didn't look at me when she said it. Just ran her finger along the rim of the glass and tossed it out like a casual headline. I'm going out on a date tonight. Try not to be too jealous. The hallway clock clicked at that exact second, as if marking the official death of something. I don't know what stung more, the word date, or the fact that she assumed I'd be jealous. Like that was all I'd feel. As if heartbreak were a compliment to her appeal. She didn't laugh, didn't wink, didn't pretend it was a joke. She just picked up her purse like she was late for something beautiful and necessary. I didn't say anything. Not at first. I watched her open the drawer to grab the car keys. My keys, actually, the ones with the keychain I got at Niagara Falls when we were still taking trips together. She held them in her palm like a trophy. Only then did I ask, softly, "Who is it?" She didn't lie. That almost made it worse. That guy from my spin class. You know, the one with the sleeve tattoo? The one you asked if he was a trainer. She tilted her head, amused. He's not. I wanted to vomit. Or scream. Or disappear. But all I managed was a nod. She took that as a green light. You've been boring lately, she added casually, as if pointing out that I'd left the milk out. I need to feel something. That's when something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not visibly, but like a bone hairline fracturing under quiet pressure. I didn't yell, didn't threaten. I just walked into the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch, hands folded like I was waiting for judgment. And then, I said it. Then don't come back tonight. She froze. You don't mean that, she said with a sudden flicker of uncertainty. I looked up. You dressed up for him. You wore lipstick we don't even own. You poured our special wine for yourself. So no, you don't get to come back here like this was normal. She stared at me, stunned, not by the words, but that I had said them at all. And then she left. The door didn't slam. It whispered shut, and I sat there in silence, wondering how long I'd been invisible, and what version of me she thought she was walking away from. The door had been closed for 3 hours, and I hadn't moved from the couch. The room was still lit only by the hallway lamp. I didn't turn on the television, didn't reach for my phone, didn't even go check what time it was. I just sat there, staring at the black rectangle of the window. It was raining outside. Not pouring, but enough to make the street look soft and distant. The kind of rain that makes you believe something important is happening somewhere else, just not here. I couldn't stop picturing them. Her, across the table from him. Her leaning in and laughing too hard. Her brushing her hair behind her ear in that way she hadn't done around me in years. Her lips, red with a color we never bought, leaving smudges on a glass I'd never touch. My mind, without my permission, kept playing those scenes over and over, in new variations, each more vivid than the last. What stung the most wasn't the idea of her body beside someone else. It was the certainty that she wanted to be seen by him. Not just physically, but emotionally. That she had invited someone into that space I used to belong to. And now, I was nothing but background noise. Around 10:43 p.m., the doorbell rang. I froze. For a brief, insane second, I thought maybe it was her. That she'd come back, ashamed, trembling, holding her heels in her hands and crying that she made a mistake. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was our neighbor, Ellie. Middle-aged, kind, the type who always brought over leftovers after a church potluck. She stood on the porch in a raincoat, holding something in her hands, a small, black clutch purse. "I think this belongs to Loretta," she said quietly. "She left it in my son's car. They were parked in front of the pharmacy. I thought maybe you should know." The words hit like a slap, but not because they were loud. Because they were so gentle, so carefully delivered. Like she was placing a porcelain dish into my hands and warning me it was already cracked. I took the purse without a word. Ellie hesitated. "I didn't want to get involved," she whispered. But she didn't look like herself tonight. Not like the Loretta I've known for years. She turned and walked back to her car, windshield wipers brushing away the rain in slow rhythm. I closed the door and stared at the clutch in my hands. It was real. This was all real. Inside, there were 2 things that mattered. A small receipt from a seafood restaurant, one we'd never gone to together, and a single square Polaroid photo. Not a selfie. Someone else had taken it. Loretta was in it, smiling at someone off camera. Her hand was resting on someone's thigh. The photo had that off-color glow of bar lights and bad decisions. I stared at it for minutes, maybe hours. And then I realized the purse didn't contain her phone, which meant she had it with her, which meant she wasn't just on a date. She was reachable. She could have texted, could have checked in, could have told me something, but she didn't. That silence was louder than anything. I put the photo face down on the table, stood up, and finally turned on the living room light. The bulbs flickered slightly. They always do that when the weather's wet. But it wasn't the light that made me uneasy. It was the fact that, now, I could see the house for what it was: quiet, cluttered, a museum of things we'd once chosen together and now barely noticed. I walked into the bedroom. Her drawer was open. A few shirts missing. One pair of heels gone. Her bottle of perfume empty. As if she had already packed the pieces of herself she wanted to keep. And then, something strange happened. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the edge of the bed and laughed, softly, bitterly, because I realized something that changed everything. She didn't smirk because she didn't care. She smirked because she believed I'd never do anything about it. She thought I was safe, forgettable, predictable, and maybe I was. But not anymore. The sun hadn't risen yet when I finally stood up from the bed. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched the sky turn a watery gray from behind the curtain. My body was tired, but my mind was electric, racing, flooded with realizations I wasn't prepared for. I kept thinking of the photo, her expression in it, that angle of her smile, not the one I used to know. There was something feral in it, free, a smile she didn't wear at home, a smile not meant for me anymore. I don't know what possessed me, but sometime around 5:12 a.m., I opened her laptop. I had never done anything like that before. It felt invasive, wrong, but so did her lipstick. So did her lies. So did the way she left without flinching. The laptop wasn't password protected. That was her first mistake. At first, there wasn't much. The desktop was neat. Folders labeled with ordinary things, work reports, travel documents, old photos from our 3rd anniversary trip to Seattle. I hovered over one labeled Final Project, but something in me hesitated. Instead, I opened the Messages app. That's when the world stopped spinning. The most recent conversation wasn't with me. Wasn't even with someone I knew. The contact name was just a single letter, J. Their last exchange had happened just a few hours ago, shortly after she left the house. J. Did he cry? Her. Nope. He just sat there like furniture. J. Damn. Thought he'd put up more of a fight. Her. He won't. He never does. J. You packed the rest of your stuff? Her. Slowly. He won't notice. J. You're staying with me tonight, right? Her. Already told him not to wait up, winking face. I stared at that winking emoji like it was a knife. I don't remember when I stopped breathing, but I know I had to physically remind myself to exhale. And then something inside me snapped, not in rage, but in this slow, creeping clarity. She hadn't just been dishonest. She had been mocking me in real-time, watching how far she could twist the knife without making me flinch. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was a spectator in her private theater of cruelty. I did something I never thought I would. I texted Jay back. Me. You forgot something in her purse. I watched as the typing bubbles flickered almost instantly. Jay, who is this? Me. The furniture. And then I shut the laptop. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the realization that everything I thought was solid, the life we built, the quiet routines, the small traditions, was just scaffolding for her escape. And I'd been holding it up the whole time. I stood in the hallway, looking at the house again. The couch where we used to fall asleep during bad movies. The kitchen where I made her pancakes every Saturday. The fridge with that stupid magnet from Sedona that she said she hated but never took down. None of it felt real anymore. Around 6 a.m., the front door opened. Softly, carefully. She stepped in like she was coming home from a walk, not a betrayal. She was still wearing the lipstick. Still smelled like a bar. Her heels were in her hand. Her eyes were puffy, not from crying, from alcohol. From whatever they did. She didn't see me at first. She tiptoed through the hallway, her bag swinging by her side, and that's when I spoke. Didn't expect to see you back this early. She flinched. Looked up. Jesus, Vernon, you scared me. I thought you weren't coming back, I said. Calm. Too calm. She didn't answer. Just gave me that look, the one that says I'm overreacting, even though she hasn't heard a word yet. I saw the texts, I said. That got her attention. She stiffened. Her jaw flexed. You went through my computer? No. I opened it. Same thing. No, Loretta. Same thing as what you're doing with this guy. Same bar, same night, same routine. That's the same thing. What I did. That's new. That's me finally seeing. She stood there silently, her eyes scanning me like she was trying to gauge whether I was bluffing. I wasn't. For once, I wasn't. You made me into a ghost before I was ready to die, I said. Still, she didn't speak. I walked over, reached for the purse she had dropped near the door, and handed it to her. You left this behind, I said. When she took it, I made sure she saw the photo I had slipped into the side pocket, the one I'd taken from it earlier, face up now. She pulled it out slowly. Her face changed. You went through my things, she said again, quieter this time. But the words were less certain, less righteous. No. I cleaned up after the person who used to live here. And with that, I walked past her, into the bedroom, and shut the door. I didn't lock it, but I didn't open it again either. Not that morning. Not for a long, long time. For 2 days, she didn't leave again. She stayed in the house like a ghost pretending to be a person. We didn't talk. Not even the performative good morning or the forced hum of small talk over coffee. The air between us wasn't thick. It was brittle. It felt like one wrong move would shatter the entire atmosphere. She didn't ask what I saw. Didn't apologize. Didn't defend herself. In that silence, it wasn't shame. It was strategy. That's when I started to get suspicious, not of the affair itself. I already knew about that, but of something deeper. Something under the surface, slithering. The thing about being married for 10 years is, even when your spouse changes, their patterns don't. You can sense shifts in rhythm. I noticed she began checking the mailbox more often. Her phone was glued to her like a weapon. She didn't log into her laptop at all. Not once. That wasn't like her. It was like she didn't want to leave a trail anymore. Then came the bathroom door incident. It was early morning, just after I'd showered. I'd left my phone charging in the bedroom and walked down the hall with a towel around my shoulders. Her purse was hanging on the bathroom doorknob. It had never been there before. She usually tossed it on the entryway bench. And I don't know what got into me, but I checked it again. I wasn't proud of it. I'm not a snoop. But when someone tells you nothing and acts like nothing, you begin to see everything. And this time, there was something new inside, folded neatly beneath her makeup bag, a printed train ticket. One way. Departure. This coming Saturday. Destination. Albuquerque. Name. Loretta D. Kinley. I just stared at it. She hadn't said a word about traveling. No family in New Mexico. No friends. And the date, 3 days from now, was the same weekend I'd been planning to drive to my parents' house alone. We'd had that trip scheduled for months. She was supposed to come. She'd made the joke weeks ago about how my dad still cuts his sandwiches diagonally like a sitcom dad. She even promised to bring her lemon bars. But now she had a one-way escape plan to another state. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a getaway. I put the ticket back exactly how I found it, careful not to shift anything in the bag. Then I left the bathroom like I hadn't seen a thing. But something was burning behind my eyes the rest of the day. She wanted to leave without saying goodbye. The day before the ticket's departure date, something even stranger happened. She started being nice. Not overly affectionate. Just polite. She asked if I wanted coffee while brewing hers. She folded laundry, my laundry. She even complimented the dinner I made without prompting. I should have been relieved. But it wasn't kindness. It was guilt wrapped in decency. The calm before a planned vanishing act. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2:13 a.m., I heard her footsteps. Soft, deliberate. She wasn't walking like someone going to the bathroom. She was walking like someone making sure the floor didn't creak. I lay still, breathing slow, pretending. I heard the rustle of plastic. The hall closet. When I got up an hour later, the blue duffel bag was gone from the top shelf. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to understand why she'd rather disappear than end things like a human being. That next morning, Friday, she looked radiant. Not in the way that caught your breath, more like a person who's already emotionally packed. She wore a light blouse. Her earrings sparkled. Her phone never left her hand. At one point, while I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll, I asked, "Still planning on coming with me tomorrow?" She looked up, startled. "What?" "To my parents. The trip. Saturday. We're still on, right?" A beat of hesitation. Just one. Then the smile. "Oh, of course. I just completely forgot it was this weekend. Should I pack for you?" I asked, watching her carefully. She shook her head, laughing lightly. No, no, I've got it. Later that day, she left the house for a quick Target run, but she took the blue duffel with her. I didn't ask where she went. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I just waited. And when she returned, 3 hours later, the bag was gone. But the lipstick was back. And suddenly, I wasn't a husband being cheated on anymore. I was a man being quietly erased. The night before she was supposed to vanish, the house felt heavier than usual. Not messy, not loud. Just weighted. Like every lamp, every cushion, every fork in the drawer was holding a secret for her. The walls knew more than I did. That's how far removed I'd become from my own life. I started imagining inanimate objects were co-conspirators. She went to bed early. Too early. By 8:45 p.m., she had a headache. Not the dramatic kind. Just enough of one to excuse her from talking. I stayed up, pretending to do paperwork at the dining table, but really just listening. The TV was on, muted. Some detective show playing in the background. The irony wasn't lost on me. At 9:31 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was her. A call, not a text. I looked at the screen in disbelief. She was in the next room. I hesitated, unsure if it was a pocket dial or some trap. But instinct took over, and I answered without saying a word. And what I heard wasn't silence. It was her voice, muffled, low, but clear enough. He's clueless. I swear, I don't even think he suspects anything. Pause. A man's voice responded. Confident. Smug. Familiar. He always seemed like the type. Passive. Mushy. The guy who still buys cards for Valentine's Day. She laughed. Not the kind I'd heard in years. It was warm. Private. I've been sleeping next to him for weeks just to keep the timeline clean. You know that, right? Another laugh. Then static. The call dropped. My body went rigid. Not from shock. I'd felt that already. This was something else. Something colder. As if every cell in me decided, simultaneously, to withdraw. Like I was watching my own life from the ceiling, floating above a man who just heard the final confirmation that he was no longer a husband, just a placeholder with a toothbrush. I didn't move for 5 minutes. 10 maybe. I couldn't. I was afraid that if I stood up, I'd do something I couldn't walk back. But I did eventually get up. Not to confront her. Not yet. I walked into the office, a room she never really cared about, and pulled open the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Years ago, I kept an old prepaid phone in there. One of those burner things I got during a tech phase. I charged it, activated it under a fake name using an old ID I'd never thrown out, and got to work. I started messaging Jay, the man she was meeting, the one from the texts, pretending to be her. It was reckless. Maybe even crazy. But I had to know how far this went. It didn't take long for him to respond. Me tomorrow. Everything's set. Jay, God, finally. Thought I'd have to drag you out of there. He still doesn't get it. Might even think we're going to his parents. Jay, you didn't tell him? Savage. I like it. Luggage is already in storage. Locker 122, Union Station. Jay, you're perfect. Union Station. That changed everything. She wasn't just disappearing. She was setting up a scene. One where I'd be left confused, humiliated, left with no trail to follow, and likely blamed for whatever fallout came after. I could see it now, the sympathetic friends whispering about how I'd never really seen her. The passive-aggressive messages from her sister. The social media posts that would hint I'd lost her because I was too boring, too predictable. But I wasn't going to let her control the ending. No, not this time. I went into the bedroom around midnight. She was asleep, or at least pretending. Her breathing was too calm, too rehearsed. I stared at her silhouette in the dim light from the hallway. For a moment, I wondered what it was like to be that still, that sure, that cruel. I almost whispered something, but I didn't. Instead, I turned around, walked back into the living room, and began writing something on a notepad. 12 words. Words I would leave for her the next morning. Words that would turn her carefully planned escape into something very different. Because if she wanted to disappear, fine. I would let her. But she wouldn't be the only one gone by morning. The notepad sat in the center of the dining table like it was radioactive. I kept glancing at it through the night, unsure whether I was really going to leave those 12 words. It felt final, real, a line drawn in ash, fragile but irreversible. By 4:10 a.m., I had rewritten the note twice, both times crossing it out like a coward. The words weren't wrong. They were sharp, concise, but something in me hesitated. Was it guilt? Fear? A pathetic hope she'd come out of the bedroom and confess? I don't even know what I was waiting for anymore. But when the birds started chirping in that faint, gray light, that thin thread of morning that makes every truth uglier, I knew. I couldn't be here when she woke up. I couldn't watch her sip coffee and pretend she wasn't about to board a train with another man. So I didn't write a note. I wrote a message. I opened the fridge, found her lemon bars, the ones she'd baked 2 nights ago, probably to keep up appearances, and carefully laid a single one on a plate in the center of the table. Next to it, I placed her passport, her engagement ring, her favorite coffee mug, and then I wrote 4 words on a small card and tucked it under the plate. This time, I didn't cross them out. You've made your choice. That was it. I packed nothing. No suitcase, no backpack. Just my wallet, keys, and phone. I walked out into the morning like I was stepping off a cliff. No scream, no splash, just a vanishing. The silence outside was unnatural. Even the trees looked frozen, as if they sensed something about this wasn't right. But I wasn't running. I had somewhere to be. It wasn't until I was halfway across town, sitting in my old beat-up Camry outside a laundromat, that I remembered something. The locker at Union Station. Number 122. That's where she was hiding the luggage. That's where her escape was already waiting for her. My heart raced. Not out of jealousy or heartbreak. I'd burned through that already. This was something different. I wanted to see what version of herself she had packed away, who she was becoming when she left me behind. So I drove. Union Station was already coming alive when I arrived. Business people rushing through like fish in a school. Families hauling suitcases. Announcements echoing through the massive ceiling. It felt cinematic, which made sense since she was treating this like a movie. Her big exit. Her clean-cut ending. I found the lockers. Tall, steel, utilitarian. Number 122 was in the second row, halfway down. I entered the code, the one Jay had mentioned in another message. 12,242. Click. Inside was a navy blue duffel. Heavy. I pulled it out, heart pounding, and carried it to the nearest empty bench. What was I expecting? Lingerie? Letters? Her journal? No, it was worse. Inside were clean clothes, sealed travel bottles, makeup pouches, and a small leather folder. I opened it. It contained hotel reservations. 2 plane tickets, Albuquerque to Mexico City, and a printed itinerary labeled Couples Sabbatical, all under her name. The second ticket, of course, had Jay's real name on it. Jackson Monroe. I'd heard her mention a Jack once in passing. A work friend. Back then, I hadn't cared enough to ask more. But here's what made my stomach fold in on itself. Tucked into the folder's front pocket was a typed letter. Not addressed to me. Not even addressed to family. It was a resignation letter from her job. Signed. Dated 2 weeks ago. She'd been planning this before she even said she was bored. Before the lipstick. Before the spin class. Before the wine glass at midnight. All of it had been rehearsed. And then I saw the final insult. She hadn't signed the hotel reservations under Loretta Kinley. She had used her maiden name. New room. New man. New country. New name. She wasn't just leaving me. She was erasing me. I zipped the bag shut, walked straight to the lost and found desk, and told the woman there I'd found an unattended item. I think someone forgot it near platform 4, I said. I handed over the bag, gave a fake name, and walked out. I didn't need to confront her anymore. I didn't need a final fight or a climactic explosion of truth. I just needed to be gone before she realized her exit wasn't clean. Because when she showed up to grab her perfect new life and found the locker empty, the folder missing, and no word from either of us, she'd panic. She'd call, and she'd realize. This time, I vanished first. She didn't call right away. That surprised me. I thought the moment she realized the locker was empty, she'd panic. Maybe even come home early and storm through the door, demanding answers. But no. The first 24 hours passed in absolute silence. No texts. No voicemails. No missed calls. Just a void. I hadn't gone back home. I was staying at an old friend's place across town, Derek. He didn't ask questions. He's the kind of guy who thinks everything can be solved with pizza and silence, which I appreciated. I didn't want comfort. I just needed a neutral room and a bed I didn't share memories with. But by Sunday morning, the day she was supposed to be halfway to New Mexico, I started to wonder if she'd even noticed yet. Maybe she missed her train. Maybe Jackson never showed up. Maybe the hotel lost her booking. There were too many maybes, and they all made my stomach twist. So I checked. I called the hotel. Used the name from the reservation, Loretta Harmon, her maiden name. A woman with a soft voice answered. Yes, Ms. Harmon and Mr. Monroe did check in Friday evening, she confirmed. They checked out unexpectedly early on Saturday morning, around 6:30 a.m. That caught me off guard. She'd made it. She'd gone through with it. She'd gone to the hotel with him, and then left? I hung up, my fingers shaking slightly. Why did she leave so early? I checked my burner phone. No new texts. No reply to the one I had sent earlier that morning. How's your weekend getaway? She'd seen it. I was sure of it. But she hadn't responded. And that silence had started to hum with menace. There was a part of me, the fragile, almost pathetic part, that hoped maybe she was ashamed. Maybe she was walking through Mexico City right now, numb with regret, realizing she'd traded a life for an illusion. But no. That afternoon, just past 3 p.m., I got a message from a blocked number. No name. No photo. Just 10 words. I hope you're proud. You've ruined everything for nothing. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger. It was venom. I didn't reply. But I knew that tone. It wasn't the voice of someone in love. It was the voice of someone who just watched the ground collapse under their feet and knew I was the one holding the shovel. But it didn't stop there. About 2 hours later, I got a second message. This time from Jackson's number. I recognized it from the thread she'd left open on her laptop. This one was shorter. You think you're clever? You messed with the wrong guy. Still, I didn't respond. Not because I was scared, but because I was done giving them reactions. That's what they fed on, my passivity, my silence, my stunned obedience. They mistook my restraint for weakness. That night, I drove back to the house. I had no intention of staying, but I wanted to see what she'd done. If she'd come back. If the scene was as quiet and broken as I'd imagined. And it was. The porch light was still on, the one I'd installed 2 years ago after she complained the stairs were too dark. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but the front door was unlocked. That was strange. Loretta hated unlocked doors. She used to double-check behind me, like a ritual. I stepped inside and instantly knew she'd been back. The kitchen lights were on. The fridge was open. A half-empty bottle of wine sat on the counter, uncorked and bleeding into a glass. And then I noticed the notepad, the same one I'd left blank the morning I left, sitting exactly where it had been. Except now, it had one sentence scrawled across the page. You don't get to disappear before I finish. It was written in her handwriting. Sharp. Slanted. Familiar. And next to it, in the corner of the table, lay the photo from the locker, the one of her and Jackson. Torn in half. Only her side remained. My breath caught. She wasn't just angry. She wasn't just humiliated. She was unraveling. This wasn't just about a failed escape anymore. This had turned into something else entirely. And for the first time in this whole mess, I didn't feel like the forgotten husband or the quiet victim. I felt like prey. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, really. Something more complicated, like the emotional equivalent of a low-grade fever. I kept turning that note over in my mind. Her handwriting. The sharp curve of the Y and U. The word finish. It wasn't a threat. Not exactly. It was more like a confession. She hadn't let go. Not of me. Not of us. Not even of the life she tried so hard to escape. And for a moment, I wondered, why? She had it all lined up. The secret man, the travel plans, the new name, the bold exit. But the truth was, she didn't want freedom. Not really. She wanted a different version of me to chase her. One who would rage, scream, demand answers, someone who'd make her feel like the center of a storm. But I hadn't played that part. I'd walked off the stage before the curtain dropped. And that, I think, undid her more than anything. I waited one more night. I didn't go back to the house. I needed time to clear my mind and decide, not how to get even, not how to make her hurt, but how to end this in a way that gave me peace. That gave me my life back. The next morning, I returned. It was quiet. No signs of her. The photo was gone from the table. The wine glass was in the sink. A faint scent of her perfume still clung to the hallway, but it already smelled like memory, not presence. I walked into our bedroom, no, my bedroom now, and opened the closet. Her side was empty. Completely. No notes. No letters. No drama. She had left. I stood there, staring at the void she left behind, and instead of pain, I felt light. Not euphoric. Not free of scars. But lighter, like I'd set down something I never realized I was carrying. That afternoon, I went to the courthouse. I filed for divorce. No delay. No conversation. Just clarity. When the clerk slid the paperwork across the counter, I signed without hesitation. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I was ready to start writing my story without her shadow at the margins. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift. I moved out of the house. It never felt like mine anyway, and rented a small place closer to downtown. Nothing fancy. Just a one-bedroom with creaky floors and a view of the train station she never made it to. I found it ironic at first, but now I like the symmetry. I reconnected with people I'd lost touch with, not to vent or relive the drama, but to re-enter the world. I started taking long walks, bought a bike, joined a local book club even though I hadn't read a novel in years. I stopped waking up with that weight in my chest. And one afternoon, sitting in a coffee shop that used to be ours, something unexpected happened. A woman sat at the table next to mine. She had short auburn hair, wore mismatched earrings, and was laughing at a podcast playing on her phone a little too loudly. When she saw me smiling at her reaction, she apologized and we struck up a conversation about music and coffee and life. Her name was Dana. She just moved to town, divorced too. And for the first time in a long while, I felt curious again. Not desperate, just open. We didn't exchange numbers that day. We talked for half an hour and parted ways with a smile. But something about that moment, that gentle, ordinary moment, stayed with me. It reminded me of something I thought I'd lost forever. The quiet dignity of being seen, not for what I endured, but for who I could still become. I don't know where Loretta ended up. I don't check. I don't need to. Whatever story she wrote for herself, it no longer includes me. And I'm okay with that. Because in the end, I didn't lose. I found myself again, not with a dramatic speech or some grand act of revenge, but by simply refusing to be the broken man she expected to leave behind. And that, for me, is the happiest ending I never saw coming.